Hunger in the dust. The sun hung low over Vara's reach, painting the shattered city in dull ochre light. Dust swirled through empty streets, curling around the ruins of once proud buildings. war-ravaged tightened the tattered shawl around her shoulders, trying to shield her thin frame from both the chill and the stares of those who passed. Her children, HFY and Kesha, walked close behind, their small hands clutching hairs, skeletal from days without proper food. The smell of smoke and decay clung to everything. Hunger gnawed at her stomach like a relentless predator, but she pressed onward. The markets had changed since the war. Stalls that once overflowed with exotic fruits and shimmering grains now offered scraps, guarded by towering enforcers who demanded bribes for every morsel. Lyra knew she had little chance of finding enough to fill even her children's stomachs. Yet she had heard whispers. A human, Captain Elias Ward, had arrived in the city. Unlike other visitors, he was said to distribute food fairly, for a price, yes, but also for work. Lyra had never begged before, but desperation had a way of stripping dignity away. She spotted him near a crowded plaza, moving with the easy confidence of someone used to authority. His uniform was simple, utilitarian, but it carried an air of command. He was human, tall, with sun-weathered skin and eyes that seemed to assess everything and everyone in a single glance. Lyra drew a deep breath, tightening her grip on her children's hands. She approached slowly, her voice barely above a whisper as she spoke in the common trade tongue. "Please, feed my kids. I'll do anything, human." Elias paused, his gaze shifting from her frail form to the two emaciated children clutching her skirts. There was a flicker of something, recognition, compassion, and then a measured nod. "Anything, you say?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "Do you know what that means?" Lyra's throat tightened. "I will work. I will clean. I will help your ship or your business. Anything. Just, please, my children are starving." Elias studied her for a moment longer, then motioned for a nearby vendor to bring a crate of preserved rations. Lyra's eyes widened as he handed it to her. The children's stomachs had gone so long empty that even the smell of food brought tears to their eyes. "This will keep them alive," he said. "But it's not charity. You work for it. Do you understand?" "Yes," Lyra whispered, bowing her head. "I will work." Even as gratitude surged through her, Lyra couldn't ignore the anxious glances from the edges of the plaza. The local authorities, corrupt and territorial, had a keen interest in anyone human, or anyone associating with humans. Some whispered that she was risking far more than her dignity. Some muttered that her life could be forfeit if the wrong people took offense. Yet the weight of hunger and despair outweighed fear. She had no other choice. The next hours passed in a blur. Elias walked her to the ship docked at the edge of the city, a sleek vessel that seemed almost alien in its cleanliness and efficiency. Lyra had never seen such technology up close. Panels that lit under touch, tools that assembled themselves, and storage compartments that never seemed to run empty. She felt both awe and unease. She was a stranger in a world she did not understand. HFY and Kesha sat quietly, watching Elias demonstrate the proper way to handle a ration crate. Their eyes, sunken and wary, lit up as he handed each of them a portion. They ate hungrily, but carefully, as if the simple act of chewing might somehow exhaust their meager strength. Lyra knelt beside them, swallowing back tears. For the first time in weeks, the children smiled. Elias leaned against the console, his gaze assessing. "You'll start tomorrow. Cleaning, basic maintenance, translating with the market traders. You follow my orders, and your children eat. Do otherwise, and, well, I don't tolerate games." Lyra nodded, her resolve hardening. "I understand. I'll do whatever you ask." As the sun set behind the shattered skyline, the first real glimmer of hope touched her weary heart. Hunger had driven her to beg, but it had also brought an unexpected chance, one that might mean survival, not just for herself, but for her children. Yet somewhere deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. Trusting a human, in a world that had so often betrayed her, carried risks she could scarcely imagine. But for HFY and Kesha, she would face anything. And in that moment, among the ruins and dust, a fragile pact was formed. The human had offered food. She had offered loyalty. Together, they would navigate the perils ahead, though neither truly knew what awaited beyond the edge of the city. A fragile arrangement. The dawn over Vara's reach carried a brittle light, cutting through the city's lingering haze. Lyra rose before her children, moving quietly to the human ship docked at the edge of the plaza. The vessel hummed softly, a living machine waiting for its crew. She had been assigned work aboard it, tasks simple enough for a novice but essential to its daily operation. Cleaning panels, organizing cargo, and observing the basic mechanics of life support systems consumed her hours, giving her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since her husband's death. Awayan and Kesha stayed behind in the small lodging Elias had arranged, eating their fill from the ration crates. Their energy slowly returned, their laughter cautious but real. Lyra watched them through a small viewport during breaks, her heart tightening at every smile. Hunger had stolen so much from them, but this simple act of sustenance brought fragments of childhood back into their eyes. Elias did not hover. He allowed her to work under his watchful gaze but intervened only when necessary. His methods were foreign. He seemed to operate on instinct, fixing problems she did not yet understand. Yet he was patient, explaining tools and procedures with the precision of a soldier and the patience of a teacher. Slowly, Lyra began to grasp the ship's rhythm. It was a delicate ballet of levers, circuits, and hydraulics, all bound together by human ingenuity. The real challenge, however, lay beyond mechanics. The human and the Clearan spoke different languages, and even when using the trade tongue, cultural misunderstandings often arose. Lyra noticed Elias's subtle gestures, the slight narrowing of his eyes when assessing risk, the careful pause before assigning a task. In time, he observed her, noting her quiet resilience, her refusal to take more than was offered, and the careful attention with which she treated every ration and tool. "What are you thinking?" he asked one evening, leaning against the rail as Lyra adjusted the cargo hold lights. "I'm thinking. I have never seen a world with so much, and yet humans waste so much of it," she said softly. "Even a scrap could feed many children in the city." Elias chuckled, a sound rough around the edges but not unkind. "Waste isn't the same to us. We produce plenty. What matters is efficiency in the moment, not perfection. You'll learn that eventually." Lyra's gaze lingered on the illuminated panels, thinking of the markets outside and the small children scavenging for scraps. She wondered how many lives could be saved if humans and Clearan could cooperate more closely, instead of watching each other with suspicion and fear. The fragile piece of her arrangement was tested when rumors began to ripple through the city. Word spread quickly. Some called her a traitor for working with a human. Others whispered she had sold herself to survive. A gang, emboldened by both hunger and greed, began to observe her movements, noting Elias's ship as a target for potential theft. Lyra felt the weight of the city's gaze on her shoulders, but she refused to let fear control her. Every step she took, every chore she completed, was for Awayan and Kesha. Elias noticed her vigilance. "They are watching you," he said quietly one evening. "Not all of them will be content to leave well enough alone." "I know," Lyra replied, tightening her grip on the cleaning tools. "I have survived worse. Hunger, loss. I will survive this too." It was during these days that she began to understand the subtle balance Elias maintained. Generosity tempered with caution, kindness paired with discipline. She saw the scars on his hands, the small tremor in his fingers when he thought no one was watching. She realized that the human's own history was written in resilience and loss, much like hers. By the end of the week, Lyra had learned more than she anticipated, not just about human tools and routines, but about the unspoken code that governed their actions. She could anticipate Elias's needs, correct minor errors before he noticed, and translate between the traders and the market with growing confidence. The children thrived, the rations lasted longer, and for the first time since the war, Lyra felt a fragile hope take root. Yet the shadow of the city remained. The gang had not forgotten her, and the authorities' eyes lingered longer than polite observation demanded. Every door she closed, every corner she turned, carried the potential for confrontation. Still, She understood that survival required courage as much as cleverness, and that sometimes the line between mercy and danger was as thin as a whisper. And so, life aboard the human ship continued, a delicate balance of trust, work, and quiet defiance, as a Clearan widow and her children navigated a world that had offered them little until now. The price of mercy. The calm aboard Elias's ship was deceptive. Lyra had begun to feel a sense of rhythm in the routine. The hum of engines, the soft clatter of tools, the quiet chatter of her children as they adjusted to a life without constant hunger. But outside the protective hull, Vara's reach seethed with danger. The gang that had been watching her movements now acted, emboldened by hunger and the authorities' indifference. It began in the late hours of the second night. Lyra had tucked Owain and Kesha into a small storage compartment Elias had set aside for emergencies, making sure the children were secure, their small hands clutching each other in anxious anticipation. She double-checked the locks on the outer doors and adjusted the environmental controls. Every sense she possessed screamed caution. A sudden alarm pierced the quiet, a shrill wail that echoed through the ship's corridors. Lyra's heart pounded. She sprinted to the control panel, eyes scanning the monitors. Shadows moved in the docking bay, figures clad in ragged armor, armed with crude weapons but determined nonetheless. They had found her. For a moment, fear clawed at her chest, but she pushed it aside. Hunger had honed her instincts. Survival had become second nature. Lyra activated the secondary security measures Elias had shown her, the magnetic locks, the hull breach alarms, the small pressure differentials that could disorient intruders. She worked quickly, her hands moving over the controls as if in a practice dance, knowing that each second counted. The gang burst into the cargo hold, shouting curses in the local tongue. Lyra held her ground, hiding behind the console. She triggered a decompression alarm in one section of the bay, forcing several of them to retreat or risk being sucked into the void. Others tried to advance, but the sudden shift in pressure disoriented them. She used every tool at her disposal: flashing lights, automated barriers, even the motion sensors that triggered small but painful electric shocks. By the time Elias returned from negotiating in the market, the intruders had fled, leaving the docking bay in partial disarray. Lyra's breathing was heavy, her limbs trembling from adrenaline. She quickly checked on her children. Owain and Kesha huddled together, wide-eyed but unharmed. Relief washed over her. For all her fear, they were safe. Elias surveyed the damage, his expression unreadable. He ran his hands along the panel she had reinforced, nodding once. "You didn't just save the ship," he said quietly, almost to himself. "You saved my cargo, and maybe a few lives." Lyra shook her head, brushing back her damp hair. "I couldn't let them touch the children. Or the food. It's all we have left." The danger, however, was far from over. Word of the failed raid would spread quickly. The gang would regroup, and the local authorities, embarrassed by their inability to prevent it, would find someone to blame. Lyra realized that staying meant constant vigilance, and possibly violence. Elias studied her, his eyes softer now than she had ever seen. "We can leave," he said. "I can take you and the children with me, away from all this. You don't have to stay." Lyra hesitated. The thought of abandoning her people weighed heavily on her. She had witnessed too much suffering to leave others behind, yet the threat was undeniable. She looked at her children, their small faces pale but hopeful, and understood that their survival was non-negotiable. "Yes," she whispered. "We go." Preparations began immediately. Lyra helped Elias chart a course, using her knowledge of the city's patrol routes to find a safe path to the outer docks. She packed what little they could carry and secured the ration crates for the journey. Every step was calculated, every decision critical. As night fell, the city seemed to hold its breath. Patrol drones scanned the sky, unaware that the ship was already in motion, slipping past them with careful precision. The first stage of escape was complete, but Lyra's mind was not at ease. She understood now that survival came at a price measured not just in hunger and fear, but in courage and quick thinking. For the first time since her husband's death, she felt a strange confidence. She could protect her children, even in a world that had tried to starve them. And for Elias, she realized, the act of mercy, feeding her children, taking them under his wing, was not without cost. Both human and Clearin were bound now by necessity, and the bond would be tested in ways neither could yet imagine. Departure under fire. The city slept under a thin veil of smog and flickering streetlights, unaware of the small ship poised to slip into the stars. Lyra moved quickly, checking every hatch, every panel, and every ration crate, ensuring Arwain and Kesha were secure for the journey ahead. Elias worked alongside her, his calm efficiency a stark contrast to the tension coiling in her chest. The final preparations were complete. Now came the most dangerous part, leaving Vara's reach without attracting the full attention of its authorities. The engines hummed to life, a soft vibration running through the deck. Lyra's hands shook slightly as she relayed sensor data, monitoring patrol patterns and scanning for drones. Every warning light that blinked demanded immediate attention. The children sat quietly, leaning against each other, trusting her instinct as they always had. Lyra had never felt the weight of responsibility so acutely. The lives of 3 humans and 2 Clearin now rested in her hands. As the ship lifted from its dock, alarms flared across the city. Patrol craft streaked toward them, their sensors locking onto the ship's energy signature. Elias's hands moved with practiced precision, maneuvering through narrow corridors of the crumbling industrial district. Lyra shouted sensor readings, guiding him through blind spots in the patrols and warning of structural hazards. The chase had begun. The gang that had tried to raid the ship before had alerted others. Missiles streaked across the sky, narrowly missing the hull, leaving scorch marks on the exterior panels. Lyra felt the ship shudder, but her resolve did not waver. "Left! Take the lower channel," she yelled, pointing to a narrow asteroid-strewn path the patrols would not risk. Elias obeyed, weaving through the debris with the grace of a seasoned pilot. Kesha clutched her sister's hand, whispering, "Will they catch us?" Lyra's gaze softened as she crouched beside them. "Not if we stay calm and trust Elias. We've done everything we could to survive. Now we finish the journey." The chase intensified as the patrol craft adapted, splitting into intercept patterns to box them in. Lyra's hands flew over the secondary controls, activating countermeasures and deploying decoy signals. She felt the familiar thrill of danger, not from malice, but from necessity. Every instinct, every memory of starvation, loss, and desperation guided her actions. The children's safety depended on it. Elias made a final, daring maneuver, a slingshot past a nearby gravity well that would hurl them past the remaining patrols if executed correctly. Lyra's calculations had been precise. She adjusted the ship's angle with small, careful taps on the controls. The craft groaned as it skirted the pool of the well, sensors warning of structural stress, but the plan worked. Patrols missed, scrambling to recover their course as the ship shot forward, slipping into the vastness of space. The jump to FTL came seconds later. The stars stretched into brilliant streaks as the ship left Vara's reach behind, leaving the ruined city as a distant memory. Lyra slumped against the console, exhaustion and relief washing over her in equal measure. Elias's hand rested briefly on her shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of their shared ordeal. The children stirred, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the navigation panels. Arwain looked at Lyra with wide, awed eyes. "We're really safe now." Lyra hugged them close, feeling a warmth she hadn't known in months. "Yes, my loves. Safe and fed. And we'll keep going, no matter what." Elias cleared his throat. "You didn't just feed your children, Lyra. You kept them alive in a world that wanted to starve them. And you saved this ship from people who would have done worse. That's courage." For the first time since arriving at the plaza, Lyra allowed herself a quiet smile. She had feared humiliation, loss, and death. But in facing them head-on, she had found something stronger: agency, resilience, and the surprising generosity of a human willing to risk for strangers. As the ship sailed into the black void between stars, Lyra realized the true gift Elias had given them was not just food or escape, but a chance at life, unbound by hunger or fear. For Arwain and Kesha, the galaxy stretched wide and full of promise. And for Lyra, Hope burned brighter than any danger she had left behind. The stars welcomed them, and for the first time in years, the future felt possible.